Hi, this is Lee Gray. I'm the author of From Ascending Rooms to Express Elevators, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Part of those controversies stem from the public not understanding what value architects bring, other than weird-looking buildings and often incomprehensible design language. For example, there's the words architects use, like fenestration, which sounds like an unpleasant medical procedure but basically means windows. For years, decades really, the architecture profession has needed someone to help explain design to the public in an accessible, non-jargon-loaded way. Joining us today is Stewart Hicks, an architecture professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago, who's become a YouTube star doing just that, and he totally rocks a 70s mustache even better than Tom Selleck. And now here's your host, mustache-free, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thank you, Tom. I have only tried facial hair twice, and each time I did it by going on a 2-week vacation and hoping for the best. I mean, how bad could it turn out? I was going for the full lumberjack look, expecting to come home and buy a chainsaw from Home Depot and start wearing plaid shirts and drinking Foster's in a can.
Right, and eating beef jerky.
Yeah. Did I mention I was an Australian lumberjack? And then I was going to get that Tom Selleck Ferrari from Magnum P.I., drive around Hawaii with Donna Dixon, before Dan Aykroyd, in the passenger seat, and entertain at my Tom Kundig designed house in Maui, with Jennifer Warnes and Storm Large performing for 100 happy guests by my infinity pool. Details, folks, are critical to good fantasies. Sadly, my beard and mustache came out, both times, like tumbleweeds in an abandoned West Texas town after a drought. My face looked infected, and a woman in Kroger actually asked me over the cheese section if I was okay.
Oh, that's bad.
No one except my friend Mike liked it, and he's legally blind, so everything got shaved off both times. Still, in real life, I did get to talk to Tom Kundig and Jennifer Warnes and Storm Large. Donna Dixon Aykroyd, now you know where to find me. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by modernist realtor Angela Roll.
It's episode 9 in our space saga. Princess Angela Roll is still missing, and dashing pilot and part-time roofer Bjarke Shingles and Lord Vader's orthodontist son Brad land in Port Calatrava, still under construction and over budget, on the vegan homeworld of soy, trading forbidden In-N-Out burgers with the planet's leading drug lord, Kyle. Bjarke and Brad learn that the princess is imprisoned on an Imperial battlecruiser orbiting SETI Alpha 6. That's never good. Arriving at SETI Alpha 6,
Try the eel.
our heroes stop in for a tasty breakfast at Khan's Waffle House, where the eggs are served cold. They beam into the battlecruiser and fight their way, just like that, into the brig, playing Enya in the ship's PA system. They mesmerize the crew and escape in a fighter that looks just like Breuer's Wassily chairs and are equally as comfortable. The Emperor threatens to burn the last known copy of Architectural Record unless the modernist rebels return the princess and stop criticizing the Empire's awful 5-story gray downtown redevelopment projects. Back here on Earth, this century's Angela Roll is your heroine of modernist houses, using her architectural training to specialize in modernist real estate, advising buyers and sellers on everything from appropriate renovation to speaking before the Galactic Zoning and Planning Board. Angela Roll is your special modern real estate agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL or 919-995-0550. Our guest, Stewart Hicks, is Associate Dean of Architecture at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Before that, he was a co-founder of Mitnick Rodier Hicks in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He won Architecture Record's Design Vanguard Award and the Young Architects Forum Prize. He's a huge architecture star on YouTube with 121,000 subscribers.
And with wife Allison Neumeier, they founded the firm Design With in 2010. They have been featured in Chicago Architecture Biennial and as Next Progressives by Architect Magazine, New Talents by Metropolis Magazine, and Chicago's Next Generation by Architecture Record. Welcome, Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Wow. It's great to be here.
So, Stewart, you got to tell me, your mustache game is just bananas. How are you doing it?
Wow. Okay. I did not know this was going to go this way. So like you, the mustache started on summer break when COVID was around, and we all wore masks when we were outside. And so that was before I wanted to start a YouTube channel, and I just happened to start a YouTube channel, once the mustache had grown in, and I wanted to shave it, but seemed like it became part of the brand, if you will. So
it's a recent addition, then.
It is a joke that went way, way too far, and here we are. It's a very recent addition, and my uncles had mustaches. My dad, my whole family had them, and I decided that summer break during COVID was the time to try it, and it's here to stay for at least a minute, I guess.
Oh yeah.
You're a real trailblazer in that respect.
Absolutely.
Nobody else grew facial hair during the pandemic.
Right. It's understandable.
Now, you've made a bunch of really wonderful videos, and I like these for numerous reasons. As a Seinfeld fan, I loved your deconstruction of George Costanza's fascination with calling himself an architect. Tell us about George and his motivations.
Yes. Well, so I've actually done quite a bit of research into the idea of character in architecture. So this is before YouTube and all that stuff. And so the idea that we use this term character to describe, fake people, but also real people, or to describe buildings and people. And so I've always kind of had my eye out on the way that buildings and people are sort of related in different ways, but then also architecture and the profession of architecture is portrayed in media. And, of course, there's no one better to represent the field of pretend architects than George Costanza.
Art Vandelay.
That's right.
Exactly. And so that was an early episode of the channel, and I was trying to figure out where I could meet people on architecture, kind of on their turf or on their own terms. And, George Costanza is a very popular character. So maybe I could present some of the real architecture that he would be surrounded by or encountering while he's pretending to be an architect. So the whole premise of that episode of my YouTube channel is about what kind of architect George Costanza would have been, what office space he would have been in the building that he said he was in. So I did a lot of research with that, and then found almost every moment where he had some unique spatial idea, like when he built a bed under his desk, which also had him dealing with a contractor. So there's a lot of data to pull from as far as what kind of architect he really would have been. And so the whole episode takes it seriously, of what he would have been and tries to bring people along for the ride.
Don't you think there are architects who have tried to build beds under their desks since?
I think every architecture student has done that under their desk in school. So
yeah,
it's kind of a rite of passage, I think.
Yeah.
And he's already done it, so he's there.
Now, originally, George came up with this just to impress a woman, right?
Yeah, that's the premise of most of those episodes.
Yeah.
He just wanted to throw it out because architect was successful, worldly, intelligent. That's what he wanted to promote about himself.
Right. And his disdain for urban planners.
Yes.
So, yeah, the character of the architect is a component of that, right? Like how we view architects in society, this kind of, sort of part intellectual, part craftsperson, someone who works with their hands but also with their mind, and why that's a desirable model for folks to pretend to be. I think it's an interesting scenario.
Because on TV, there are not that many architects that they're made up or even real. I mean, there was the father on the Brady Bunch. He was an architect.
Right.
And there was Ted from How I Met Your Mother. He was an architect, right?
Right.
And then I think way back, William Wyndham in My World and Welcome to It. I think he might have been an architect.
The deep cut.
Yeah. But not a whole lot of architects in TV.
Interestingly, I think there are more architects in film than in TV, now that I think about it. Because I think if they're an architect on TV, they need to be shown architecting more. Versus in film, when you're only with that character for a maximum of 2 hours, you can get away with a pretty removed. And that's where the idea of the character of the architect comes in, where it's like the construction of our concept of the kind of person that an architect is versus exactly, or like something that's a little bit more removed from the actual day-to-day of the things that they do.
They seem sexy and intellectual, but could probably fix your table leg or something at the same time.
Right.
So it does seem like a single woman's dream character in a rom-com.
Speaking of that,
is often
my favorite architecture movie is The Lake House, which we did a whole show about.
That's true. Yeah,
where Keanu was playing an architect, and I think his dad and his brother were also architects in that. And Sandra Bullock was falling wildly in love across time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that character type also is someone we expect to be kind of in touch with their feelings, or able to kind of feel emotion deeply at the same time as they're practical and rational. So that, there's this embodiment of dichotomies that the character of the architect portrays.
And yet architects don't show up on the cover of Cosmo, do they? I mean, you'd think, come on.
Or in calendars.
Yeah.
That's where the reality and the fiction aren't always aligned.
Right.
Your most popular video, I think so far, is called Why Do Architects Insist on Using Flat Roofs? 780,000 views. Wow. Why do architects insist on flat roofs?
It's a kickback from the roofing industry.
Actually, wouldn't it be the opposite? I think it uses less material.
Yeah.
It's
the opposite.
Which is one of the arguments.
Okay. Not that leaks develop because there's puddles up there?
No, that's so 60s thinking.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. We got new technologies now, Tom.
Child of the 60s, what can I say? So why?
Why? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I just noticed that in a few of my videos, people commented about how immoral the use of flat roofs are. And it struck me just really out of the blue that I didn't know that the public had this conception that flat roofs were the devil's work. So
really immoral.
Immoral.
Well, just kind of wrong on lots of levels. I think that I don't know. A lot of the comments were aesthetic, but then also, why would anyone do this when it's obvious that they leak? It just seems so inept. Both visually. Our visual sensibilities, as well as it just seems so non-commonsensical to folks. And so, the title of the video is a bit of a ploy because I think people tend to, in that scenario, paint architects as being egotistical and asserting their will on people. And instead, the video kind of goes into the real practical applications of why flat roofs are sometimes the only idea, the best, not only the best idea, but the only way to solve a problem. And so it's a little bit more technical based because I didn't think I'd be winning any aesthetic arguments just by showing how beautiful they were. So it tends to focus on some more objective things. But paints a picture of why architects would choose to use flat roof sometimes and why it's a good solution.
And these days, because we have rubber membrane roofs, you don't have the leaking problems that the gravel roofs and the tar roofs and the other materials had earlier on, right?
Yeah, certainly. There's a lot of advancements in materials. Sometimes the geometry of the building just doesn't afford. It would produce a lot of hills and valleys and things that are also difficult to control. They make a lot of sense in areas where there is a sort of maintenance regimen and things like that. So, the advancement of materials and things like that go a long way. And then I also just noticed a lot of people using the Sullivan phrase form follows function, and that flat roofs seem to violate that law. And so the video also takes the opportunity to talk a little bit about the origin of that phrase and how Sullivan used a whole lot of flat roofs as well.
And I notice a lot of the times that people just can't seem to bear not having an attic. That's why they like the gabled roofs, because there's all that space they can throw their stuff up there that
That's
they're never
true.
going to use.
We are a nation of hoarders.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the flat roof kind of cuts that attic thing out.
Where else are you going to put the spinster in?
Yes.
Are height restrictions a factor too? You know, say in,
I think so, yeah.
like
That's
coastal
something that came up a
neighborhoods?
lot.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that's something that came up a lot in the comment section was, you know, it also makes a lot of sense where there's a height restriction, but there's a certain density that we want to achieve, and it does maximize sort of occupiable space in an ideal way.
So I got a question for you. I see this as a trend in California. I don't know if it's reached the rest of the country. People are using their flat roofs now as large decks. They're making a little stairway up there and putting a railing around it, and that's their party deck.
That's happening in Manhattan a lot.
Yeah.
During the pandemic.
Are you seeing that too?
Certainly, I think that that's a great use of space on the roof. You know, I think Le Corbusier's argument about why a flat roof was so ideal had in part to do with producing a new kind of landscape up above, or an occupiable space that would be connected to the exterior but part of the architecture and frame the sky in various ways. So I think that's a real ideal use for a flat roof.
Well, Stewart, here's a clip from one of my favorite segments you did. And in it, you're trying to seriously convince us that bricks don't talk.
Yeah, I'm Will Quam. I run a project called Brick of Chicago. I know a lot about bricks.
I reached out to Will because I had a recent epiphany that maybe not all bricks want to be an arch. You see, every architect knows the story about Lou Kahn talking to bricks. Lou Kahn says, you say to brick, what do you want, brick? And brick says to you, I like an arch. And you say to brick, look, I want one too, but arches are expensive and I can use a concrete lintel. And then you say, what do you think of that, brick? And brick says, I like an arch. To see how all this stacks up, Will agreed to introduce me to bricks. So I asked him if he could talk to bricks, like Lou Kahn.
What? No, I could talk about bricks. I thought I made that clear in my email. You can't talk to a...
So if you can't talk to them, how do you know what it wants to be?
I mean, it's a Chicago common brick. It's a brick made in Chicago. And I guess, that's a piece of limestone, which is ancient seashell. So that was alive. But I can't talk to mollusks.
That's just priceless.
That was really great.
So share with our listeners a little more about Louis Kahn's favorite brick theory.
Oh boy, I think that's my favorite video. It's the least scripted, or it's completely unscripted actually, and it just kind of came completely organically. And Will Quam was a great sport. He had a background in theater too, and so he was really able to.
He was very deadpan
play that out
in the right spot.
Oh, so deadpan, yeah. So I came to Will, who is the brick expert in Chicago. He leads the tours about Chicago bricks and uses that as a device for talking about neighborhoods and Chicago history and its architecture. And I highly, highly recommend it. I went to him and said, I have this idea for a video about Lou Kahn's adage, which he does. Lou Kahn talks to a student, and basically the lesson that Lou Kahn's trying to impart is that sort of materials have biases, that certain materials want to do certain things, and one should work with those biases. And so bricks stack on one another, but the arch is an invention that allows bricks to span space. You wouldn't think you could just stack stones or objects on top of one another and be able to get something that spans across space. Bricks are an amazing invention that work completely in compression. So if you ask a brick what it wants to be, it wants to be an arch. That's a high aspiration for this thing that
very noble
wants to pile on. It's so noble of itself. But that's a device of talking to a brick, and so that's just something I wanted to play with. And I sort of played the stooge in that one, where I kind of came to him and wanted to really know, because I see bricks around me all the time that aren't arches. Are they? And
they aren't talking either.
And they aren't talking. Like, are they just kind of not so aspirational? Like, are they the dumb
They're
bricks?
lazy bricks.
And would the most aspirational brick want to be the keystone?
I would imagine.
At the top of the arch.
The head guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd be primping.
Stephen, I think you should do a sequel where you talk to cinder blocks.
We are working on a sequel.
I want to be a grad student's bookshelf.
Will actually has, I think, 40 or 50 bricks at his house. He is a brick connoisseur, so there is a sequel in the mix.
Excellent, excellent. Another segment you did, which I thought was great, was architecture and cars.
So I wanted to make a YouTube channel for a full year, and I think I recorded about 20 times the exact same episode, trying to test things out. I felt very uncomfortable on camera. I didn't like any of it, and I couldn't even envision what a video would be like. And so that video about cars is the one that I recorded 20 times. But I love cars, and so I thought that would be a great spot to start. I have a lot of passion about the automobiles, and I love architecture, so maybe something that I care a lot about would be a great place to start. And so the whole video actually takes place in the three-dimensional space of a 3D modeling program. And I kind of go through different 3D models talking about buildings and cars and how they relate, from architects who design cars to novel parking garages to the way it affects the home. And this all takes place in the space of a 3D modeling program. Yeah, that was a fun one. It was a difficult one because it was the first one, and it's one that I kept trying to record. But I also got contacted by someone who writes for automobile magazines off of that and wants to collaborate on some videos. So I'm really excited to do more that bridges the gap between architecture and automobiles.
Now, you make this look very effortless on video, but I know how much time it takes to put these together. So how do you balance that against also teaching and also running your design practice?
Yeah, completely unsuccessfully. It is not an easy balance. So what got me over the hump of actually putting out the first video was going into lockdown and having lectures that I needed to record for students. That got me a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera, and the students at the end of the class said, "You need to start a YouTube channel." And I didn't tell them that I had recorded the same video 20 times and secretly really wanted to do it. But
nobody needs to know that.
Yeah, they got me over that hump, and I've been doing a video per week ever since, in December 20th, and I think it takes, it's a full-time job making a video per week. It's also a full-time job teaching and a full-time job working in a practice. So, I'm trying to do them all at the moment. I don't know how sustainable it is for the long haul, but right now it's kind of coming from sacrifices from everyone involved and working really hard at it. And but the passion's there. I really love it. I love the creativity of making videos. I like the pace. Architecture is very, very slow. It takes years to put out a building, but to make a video about building takes a week. And I can put one out a week at this rate. And I think that pace is a lot of fun and is really keeps the appetite alive in between, the long periods that it takes a building to get designed and produced.
Now, our chief researcher, Carrie Cesarino, dug deep into your Instagram feed, Stewart. So tell us about the pool in the middle of your old house in Urbana.
Wow. So, before teaching at the University of Illinois at Chicago, I taught at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, starting in 2008. And when I moved down there with my wife and partner, Allison, we had the opportunity to purchase a house that was designed and built in 1977 from the architect and professor at U of I, Harold Young. And he designed this house for himself that had no windows to the outside world. It had a courtyard with sliding glass doors to the courtyard. It had a 15-foot square skylight in the middle, and the house had no rooms either except for the bathroom. It was one large square open space with a square 15-foot pool right in the middle with no fence, nothing to block it. It was basically an indoor pool with a house around it.
And no windows?
No windows on the outside walls.
No fenestration,
No,
I believe?
yeah, right. It's just sliding glass doors. So it was quite light inside, but
Okay.
it had no windows that one could see in. So it was completely internalized. And the house belongs in California. Like, it does not belong in the middle of Illinois.
How was the chlorine smell?
It was fine if you kept it covered.
Okay.
If you kept it covered, and so in the winter, when there was a real differential between the humidity, if it was dry in the house and you open the pool up and the pool was heated, it would instantly, fog everything up and smell. But if you kept it covered, it was all good.
Wow.
We have a house like that in Chapel Hill. Very similar.
Really?
Designed by Arthur Cogswell, who died about a decade ago. It's a fascinating house. Unfortunately, it had deteriorated quite a bit. But about 8 years or so ago, a couple bought it and completely renovated it. And it's gorgeous now.
When did he originally build it?
Oh, it's amazing.
This was in about the same time, about 72 or so, 75.
Okay.
Yeah, this house had a history. The architects themselves lived in it for 7 years. Then an astrophysicist bought it and lived in it till we bought it. So they lived in it for 20-something years, and they had that skylight. He talked about, watching the stars through it, and it was really incredible. And it was, it's amazing to think about how the house sort of serves these different ways of loving it. So, he loved it because you could look up the stars. We loved it because of the architecture. And then the person who bought it from us was a bonsai enthusiast and loved it because of the light, and that he was able to cultivate his bonsais in the courtyard and bring them in, and the relationship of the inside to outside for that reason. And I think to me it was a great lesson about how great architecture, even if it has a kind of mission, a single mission even, can be loved by different people for very, very different reasons.
What does a house want to be?
Yeah.
Many things.
Yeah, that's right.
In addition to working architecture and teaching and practicing, you and your wife, Allison, have been experimenting with some virtual reality and world building?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that really drives us is just literature and relationship between literature and architecture, and how architecture, I don't know, like some people, when people do world building, they imagine architecture, or buildings can hint at the idea that there might be other parallel realities, sort of. There's an architect named Charles Moore who talked about fairy tale architecture.
That's Sea Ranch, right?
Yeah, that's the architect of Sea Ranch, exactly. And so he gave this really great lecture about fairy tale architecture, which was basically how architecture and buildings could hint at the idea that there are other worlds, sort of. And one way of doing that, he threw up a bunch of photos of really extravagant porches and front entryways. And so that entryway sets us up to understand the interior of that building as some other space, as some other realm, like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or something, like that you open a door into some other space. And that's kind of what we're into, is this idea of how architecture can promote stories and relate to stories, and how through other design strategies of things that maybe look a little out of place, or look like an architect had a real idea about why something is there, and somebody might want to investigate it and learn more about it. So this idea that objects and spaces can really have a history, have a life, and have stories attached to them that are not just the ones that are the here and now.
I'm surprised that more schools don't use very popular products like Minecraft to teach these kinds of ideas, because, the kids are playing it anyway. You'd think that they could use that as part of a lesson plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are architects who are into that, who are really exploring that space. I think virtual reality and video games, I think, video games are probably the medium of storytelling of the future, or of the now. I mean, video games are such a huge industry. You have music artists giving concerts all through a single video game, Yeah. It's incredible the way that it structures time and space, and with the metaverse and things like that, it's
they're like interactive movies.
Yeah, exactly. And I do get a fair bit of comments on videos from folks who say, I'm just here because I want to learn how to build a better Minecraft building or better Minecraft space, which is fine. That's cool. Like, any reason to want to engage the content and architecture, and whether it's because you want to build a cooler, Sims house or understand the physical world around you in a different way, I think is all great ways to get into and think about this stuff.
So I assume that's comments from the general public that are on YouTube. What's it like with the architecture students of today? What are they into as a group?
Oh, boy. I'd like to know that.
Have you met any?
Yeah, we're fully online this semester. What are they into these days? I'll ask that. My very first day of class this semester is today, and I will pass that question on. I'd like to hear it from the horse's mouth and not speak for anybody. I did get a Oculus for Christmas, which is my inroad into virtual reality, which I have yet to use in a professional way, but it is incredible. Like, it truly feels like the future. You put that headset on and you're immersed in a space, and that space is your reality in your space, and it's really incredible.
Yeah, when you combine an Oculus with a fairly good-sized mini computer, you can create complete virtual experiences. I did one a couple of years ago in Orlando, where we put on these jetpacks, which were computers, basically.
Yep. Okay, good.
And then headsets, and it turned us into stormtroopers for Star Wars.
Yep.
You would look down at your arms, and you had stormtrooper arms. And stormtrooper legs, and you were holding stormtrooper stuff. It was unbelievable.
And people, like the people you interact with, look in your eyes. It's so immersive that way. It's really incredible. As part of the YouTube channel, I have a series called Lost Architecture, which basically we build a 3D model of a building that was either demolished or unbuilt in the first place. And I give a little history about that design and then explore it in the computer in a program that basically makes the 3D model like a video game, which you kind of walk around and look around, and then use that to kind of catalog my initial reactions and the experience of the thing for an audience. And then I make those 3D models available to folks who can use a VR headset to look at them. I don't know how often they do that, but that's something that we've been doing every once in a while. And, it's hard to know how exactly, it feels both a way of connecting with folks, but it also feels kind of isolating. You put that headset on and you're alone. It's hard to...
But you're not. Yeah, there's people all around you.
I know.
Yeah, you are and you aren't. It's weird.
Yeah, it's very matrixy,
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And maybe, we're too old to know exactly how to, or I'm too old to know exactly how to pioneer that stuff. But, it's really exciting stuff.
Just get a 15-year-old to help you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just starting YouTube now, and it's 15 years later after it started. So I can't even figure out TikTok or anything. So I don't know.
Please consider for your projects doing a model of the Catalano house, which was here in Raleigh, North Carolina, designed by Eduardo Catalano. It was one of the first hyperbolic paraboloid houses in the country, sadly destroyed in 2001. And you can see it on the homepage of our website at US Modernist.
I will look into that. That sounds fascinating.
What are your plans for future episodes?
Oh, boy. So, I'm not experienced at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know any of the technical stuff. I'm not trained as a journalist or anything like that. So there's a lot of hidden agendas for me learning things along the way to try to kind of bolster. It started in my den making the videos. I asked my best friend if I could do a video about his building because I knew he wouldn't hate me if I screwed up the footage. So first time leaving my den was with the best friend. So basically I'm trying to build out. I want to build out from the den and do further things away. Right now I'm kind of focusing on Chicago and have a few videos that are in the mix. The latest one was about adaptive reuse, and the next one is going to be about salvage. So I go visit some folks that have called the Rebuilding Exchange that salvage building parts and talk to people who reuse components of buildings. After that, I'm going to be going to some retail spaces and looking at some unique retail places here in Chicago, basically using local to Chicago examples to be able to talk about larger, broader, more universal ideas. And hopefully, once I get more comfortable interviewing folks, kind of going to spaces and filming, we'll expand out from Chicago. I've got one on the horizon I'm really excited about, which is why architecture belongs in museums, where I'm going to talk to folks who are at the Art Institute of Chicago. And we'll talk about some of the pieces they have, the architectural pieces they have, and why they belong in a museum, and how, as a museum, they can advance understanding of architecture in a way that, like, architecture itself can't. You know, it's an institution that can preserve things and teach people in a way that, you know, not everybody can do. And so there's lots of different types of topics, and they're all sequenced in a way that I can slowly build up the skill set of the vast and diverse amount of things that are required of you when you make a video, like learning audio and lighting and camera equipment and all that stuff.
Well, I hope as part of your Chicago series, you'll go out to the Ferris Bueller house.
Ooh. I think that's private. I don't know if they want me trampling on their lawn.
Well, you'd have to ask them first. You just can't show up with a camera.
See, I'm learning.
Yeah. Video 101. You got to call first. We did a show with the owners a couple years ago, and she was just delightful.
Oh, maybe you could put me in touch. That would be amazing.
Sure. So as you continue to roll out these YouTube episodes, is the mustache going to stay with us?
Every time I contemplate tearing it off, people say it's part of the brand. You know, I don't know. I'm ready for it to go, but there's too many photos with it that I'd have to change out a lot of stuff at this point.
Or if you shaved it off, you'd have to paint it back on.
Never looks the same.
Groucho Marx did that?
Yeah. As part of the class I was teaching, I recorded some of the later lectures first, before I had a mustache, and then the earlier lectures later once I did have a mustache. So there was this moment in the class where it went from mustachioed videos to none, and I had to preface these with, you know, my eyes are up here, you know. Please pay attention to the content.
Well, this has been really fun. You're doing a great job with these and an excellent service to the public.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been great speaking with you. And I appreciate your podcast, too. We're an allied effort.
We are.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Modernist Realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, let's close it out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 15,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. While rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino researches guests, she's also preparing to launch the world's first band of rock and roll architecture researchers, Carrie and the Rockavists. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I will be back soon with another YouTube star edition of U.S. Modernist Radio. Or maybe we'll interview a few talking bricks. Stay tuned. Maybe go down to the NC State Brickyard.
Yeah. Big crowd.